Hey traders, this is Christian Fromertz, Tribeca Trade Group with your end of day recap for Thursday, and more continuation. When we shot yesterday's video, we talked about some buy signals in the charts, and it's difficult. I know some people say they look and they have 2 days of gains, and they're like, hey, it's time to take profits. I didn't really do that yesterday. I just kind of figured that there's a lot of buy signals. We look at this, and the one thing that what jumps out to me is the MACD. So MACD indicator flashed a bullish crossover yesterday, and that's fully developed on S&P. So we did see that a few other places a little bit earlier for Qs. And again, I mean, we have this frame of reference, right? And it happened pretty quickly. I guess it was a little bit more grinding up of a day, but we kind of had the playbook from the beginning of February. And again, I went over all this in yesterday's video too. So, I'm not making I'm not making this stuff up. I talked about the same type of pattern, and I said I was like, oh, we have the exact same pattern. And I said, you know what? It's a similar pattern. We got above this. Downward trend line in July, and we did the same thing. It's a little bit different angle, and it took a little bit longer, I think. But once you get over it, it's the MACD crossover coincided almost perfectly with the two breaking of the trend lines on both the S&P and on Nasdaq. As Nasdaq, like I said, S&P is a little bit later than Nasdaq happened. So, a really strong day all around. SPYs were up 60 basis points. Q's up 1.1% in IWM, which continues to move, into that 50-day moving average, but really nicely over the 200-day moving average. So white line is 200-day, purple line is 50-day moving average. So into a little bit of resistance. Tomorrow is the first of the month, so sometimes there's some new trades on the first of the month. It is before a long holiday weekend, and we also have jobs tomorrow. So could we pause tomorrow? Sure, absolutely. Could we give some of today's gains back? Sure, absolutely. If it does, I think it might continue to kind of be like it was the last couple of days. I mean, maybe not so well bid the market for the last couple of days, but I think we're still go higher here. But I think maybe we back and fill a little bit, considering we've got a Friday before the end of a long holiday. I think we just kind of use a little bit of common sense, and say it's a long holiday. People are going to take a little bit of profits going in, and are going to be quite happy about how the end of the month turned out. So, yeah, so that's basically small caps, the review of the major indices. Again, a little bit of resistance there. We're going to have a new value area. As we get right to the top of value, and we get there quickly. This is what the September value area looks like. It looks like we're going to open up above value, which I think is a good sign as well. I will just to kind of review some of the trades that we did this week. One thing that, and again, I think I talked about this in last night's video, but I structured a trade, just a weekly trade in IWM for I think 28 cents. I took the thing off for 85 cents today. So dollar wide spread. I'm gonna look to do that trade whenever I can when it sets up. It doesn't set up well every week, but when IWM was very different. Even though they all rallied, but IWM was the only one. If you go back to Monday, was the only one that started the week above value, and to me, that's a buy signal. So I played that for IWM. Really, really nice looking trade for the week. Again, it was either 27 or 28 cents. I took it off today for 85 cents. So almost full boat, and I probably it expires tomorrow. I mean, I could have held off for the last 15 cents of the dollar wide call spread, but whatever. Close enough, I say, especially with jobs tomorrow. So, again, I love the fact that everybody talking about biotech, huge move, huge move, big continuation move. We caught this last week. Again, I'm not trying to really, say, hey, give myself a huge pat on the back, but we caught this thing right on the move of the 50-day moving average. There's nobody that was really talking about this, the MACD crossover. Biotech has done this a couple times now when we've had a little bit of chop, very choppy markets, and and biotech will lead us higher. So it's done that now twice. So really important to pay attention to this XBI ETF. It'll do the same thing when we have volatility too. When volatility enters into the marketplace, XBI will be one of the first thing that starts to go down as well. Biotech gets hit rather quickly, but yeah, this started to make the move. You look at the Q, even if you look at the Qs chart, right? I mean, here was the MACD crossover which is on my Twitter feed from last week. That's on 824. You go back to the Qs, whoops, and we just got the MACD crossover 3 days later. So again, helped by a deal, with Gilead, which I've been long. So just monster trade, monster trade for me for Gilead, monster trade for anybody who's been in some small cap biotech. Again, I look at XBI because it's everything. The difference between XBI and IBB. XBI is equally weighted, so it's got more smaller cap biotech in it, but IBB and XLV caught up today. So it was really XBI that made the move. The smaller cap biotech, the higher beta biotech made the move first. And then, I mean, look at healthcare today. So I was talking about a trade on Twitter today, which I think I should have here. Yeah, I mean, this was a trade that they put on last week. Again, nobody talking about this. I don't see anybody that really mentioned this trade or put some analysis out on it, but we sure did. This was a huge block that went up. Again, here's my original post on it. Healthcare ETF on watch here, on watch for a reclaim of the 50-day moving average. 7.5 or 7,500 December 83 calls were purchased. I believe they purchased that for 59 cents. I think it was marking at over $1 today. So, some of these block trades, especially in the ETFs, I think are really interesting because you don't have single stock risk. So these things can move quickly. If somebody puts up a big block in these things aggressively, which they did just last week, just last week, this is what the chart looked like then, right at the 50-day moving average. This is what it looks like now. So just a huge, colossal move in this, and it took a day and a half before the healthcare names started to follow with small biotech. So spending a lot of time on this one. I'm already 7 minutes into the video, so I'm not going to talk about any more individual names. But listen, it's basically you could have had any one of these, and they all made the same move. So Twitter people are quoting all these different ones. They all went up. I mean, it is what it is. I think if you were in any of them, you were happy. So I'm not going to put up specific charts. They all crushed it the last couple days. But I do think it's kind of funny how people do that. Oh, look at this one. Look at that. Oh, look at that one. Sure, they all went. I mean, I would say 90% of them, full participation rate in the small cap biotech names. Unbelievable. All right, next. What else was bid today, which was a little bit of a head scratcher, was gold. Gold you would think would be kind of down today. It was up 1% today, so real big move. And believe it or not, there was some sector ETFs that did better than biotech today. Look at GDXJ was up 3.3% today. So again, above the 200-day moving average. I'm still long GDX. I thought I was going to get stopped out of it, considering this week's. I got in on the 200-day moving average right here. I thought, okay, risk is on right now. The gold miners are going to get beaten up, but that was not the case. So really, really strong, up 2.3%. So happy to be up in some higher beta names and also to be getting profits in GDX today. Oil names were also strong. They were actually the strongest in the morning. They still kind of hung in there. XOP was up 1.8%. And also the housing names, so didn't hear. There was a nice follow through trade in DHI the other day, right into the weakness. Right around when housing was at the lowest. This is ITB, the home construction ETF, which has about 65% home builders. So it's actually a better ETF than XHB if you want exposure to the actual builders. I think XHB, I'm going from memory, only has about 25% exposure to the home builders, even though it's called the home builders ETF, and ITB has 60%. So DHI, this is a home builder that we saw a bunch of calls go up a few months ago. So you can see, by the way, this is getting back to the 50-day moving average here in ITB. But DHI, we saw calls. I took this trade, I think it was 2 days ago I took the trade. It basically didn't do anything yesterday. But this is where they bought the calls. So they originally bought calls, January calls in here, and then they added to the position right on the lows, which is where I bought it. So nice move today, up 2%. I was able to take some of that trade off for nice profits. So good to see that woke up. I had a lot of questions in the trading room about why didn't the Chinese internet names really perform today. It's actually pretty simple, guys. Whenever I'm kind of giving away a little bit of a secret here, but whenever if the Hang Seng is down overnight, usually the China internet names do not go along with it. If the Hang Seng is up over 1%, it's risk on for the Chinese internets. Sorry, I'm kind of giving this away in a video, but it is what it is. If you put the Chinese internet ETF with the Hang Seng, you could see what this has done recently. If I could get this to work on Bloomberg. Come on, Bloomberg. There you go. I mean, look at how nicely these have been moving together. The orange line is the China Internet ETF. So your BABA, your JD, your NTES, your WUBA, Weibo, that kind of stuff, Momo, BZUN, they're all in this ETF. So if the Hang Seng is down, it's really hard for them to have a huge day. Not to say that they all can't, that they're all going to underperform. Momo got the nice up initiation by Goldman with I forget what the price target was, but way north of where it is now. Same thing for YY, which was also up 5% today. This chart, that YY chart, looks pretty good to me. Maybe a little bit just kind of poking its head above here. So it's going to be, obviously there's company specific things going on, but for the most part, it's going to underperform a little bit. Actually, the China Internet ETF was up 1.4% today, so still pretty good. And I think a lot of that was the names that I mentioned that were up so big today. So what else? So I'm spending a lot of time going over the performers and not today's option activity, which I'm going to get to. But the banks, they did not participate today. The banking ETF KBE was flat. KRE was down 10 basis points. We do have a jobs number tomorrow. So if, let's bring up the economics for tomorrow. They're expecting, what are they expecting? They're expecting 180,000 for non-farm payrolls. Private payrolls are looking for 172. Remember how this usually works. If it comes in at a really strong number, you kind of have to just play this through your mind a minute. If the jobs number is really strong, that means that a rate hike could come sooner than later, and that usually means banks are bid. It's vice versa. If it's a negative number, it's usually bad for banks because at this point, banks need rate hikes. I truly believe that, and that's my opinion. I just don't think that they're making a ton of money, and regardless of what people say in financial media, I think they're doing better than they did years ago, but they're not having the heyday that they had years ago. So they need rate hikes, and so if that number is bullish, perhaps we could see some of those actually participate tomorrow. If not, it's going to be tough sledding again for the banks. So that's for tomorrow morning. We'll see what the rest happens. Also, consumer staples, utilities, they didn't perform today. In terms of today's option activity, continuation in AMD again right off the bat. In AMD, I'm already long AMD. I've been long for a couple weeks now in AMD. So like to see this thing hang in there. It hasn't gotten back above the 50-day moving average, so kind of hesitated here. But there was some call buying just like there was yesterday in AMD, but had that real nice pop again off that initial call buying. this morning. So, if you did that day trade, I would assume you had to be quick. There was some energy buying early on, HIMX, some more call buying in some of the, really higher speculative names like HIMX. Same thing. There was some call buying in Teva today. So kind of the bottom of the barrel names, I would say. No offense to those names. And then there was just a lot more of the pharma and biotech call buying. So OMER, there was February calls bought, 17 strike puts sold. Bristol Myers continues. I think Bristol Myers has been up for like 7 or 8 days in a row, something like that. I shouldn't say that because you're going to get all the people on Twitter start to count the days. Um, People love to do that on Twitter. They love to do that. Let's see. I can't, for some reason, I can't change the symbol there. Yeah, there was some gold calls, UNG calls. So yeah, a lot of GDX, 25,000 February 45s. PRTX, another biotech name. Abbott at the end of the day saw some calls right on the highs of the day. Thinkorswim still won't let me change the symbol, so I'm not sure what's going on there. What else? Valet, just a lot of calls. Keep in mind if you're, I don't know, my computer's frozen. So I think there was at one point 28,000. There might have been a little bit more of those, but keep in mind this is an $11 stock. As I tell Tribeca Trade Group members in the trading room today, it's an $11 stock. You don't necessarily have to mess with the options if you don't want to. I think what they purchased those for, yeah, it looks like 28,000 as my computer's coming back up here. If you don't want to mess with the options that are just basically a month and a half out, looking for about an 8% move, you can just purchase the stock for 11 bucks. To me, that's a lot simpler than dealing with a depreciating asset. That's going to be very, the theta decay is going to be pretty big on October options. So, and then implied volatility is really jacked in Valet. So you can make it a lot simpler by just purchasing the stock. I didn't do that today. I didn't want to really purchase a lot of things at the end of the day before in front of a big long weekend. I actually didn't do much purchasing at all. I tried a couple things for a day trade. There was another order, AZN, which I purchased. This one up earlier in the day. I took them off for a scratch. I did put on a small Tesla trade, which I have a video out on the trade idea, the exact way I executed it through options. So that's out there. It's on my Twitter page, so you can check it out. So that's basically it. A couple of the names that reported earnings all look pretty good. Again, I can't. There's 3 or 4 names. Amba's up. Lulu's up. Palo Alto is up. NTNX kind of gave back some of the gains, but of those, all those names that reported are all up. So, we'll have to see something that's not going to be something, I guess, company specific that might cause us to kind of move down a little bit. Could be something in the jobs number. Also, could be some profit taking going into the long weekend. All right, so that's it for today's video. Have a great night. See you tomorrow morning.